Hi, I'm Kerri and welcome to my knitting studio. I'm really excited to talk about all of the projects that I knit in 2025, which is 22 projects this year. It's actually the exact same number that I knit last year as well. If you're new here, I'm a knitter based out of Columbus, Ohio. I've been knitting for, 17 years now. It's been quite a while. And I also am a mom to a 3-year-old. I work full-time in the fashion industry and I also design patterns part-time on the side in my, at this point, very limited free time. So let's go ahead and get into the knitting. I knit 7 adult sweaters this year, 4 kid sweaters, and a bunch of accessories. I knit 9 adult accessories and 2 kid accessories. So I'm going to go through all of the sweaters first and then all of the accessories, kind of talking about each category of accessory that I have. And if you enjoy this video, I do hope you'll follow along here on YouTube. I do a podcast every couple of weeks to share all about the knitting that I'm working on and would love to have you along. So first up, we're going to talk about sweaters. As I said, I knit 7 adult sweaters this year. I have them all in a stack over here, and a lot of these are my own patterns, though I do have one from another designer as well. Some of them are new designs, some of them are just things that I've, re-knit an old design because I wanted another version of that garment. So we'll go ahead and get into it. First up is Rockmill Cardigan, and this is a design of mine that I'm hoping to publish here in 2026 sometime. I actually cast this on in like fall 2024 and then finished it in I think February of 2025. So this is worked up in 2 yarns held together. It is Rosa, Pomar, Vovo held with Knitting for Olive Mohair, and it has a really beautiful textured design. And in the pattern, I'm planning to include a bunch of different textured options. I've already released a pair of socks, hat, and mitts with this same kind of design concept where you have just a broken rib and garter texture that you kind of do at different combinations to create a different look. So I'm gonna have that same kind of concept here in this sweater. I absolutely love this sweater. It has definitely become a staple this year for me. It is a little bit of a brighter, less neutral green. They're definitely like neutral greens. I love green. It is one of my favorite colors. This is a little bit of a less neutral green, so sometimes it doesn't quite work with all of my outfits, but I have plans to correct that by knitting another one in a more darker neutral green color. So this is a top-down drop shoulder design, and it has a little bit of an extended drop shoulder. So here you can kind of see that the armhole seam goes a little bit farther out compared to the chest, and that's just to get a nice drop shoulder look while not necessarily having the body need to be quite so oversized. So as I said, I worked this up in 2 yarns held together. It approximately equates to a DK weight. I worked it up on US size 6 needles, and the finished bust circumference of this garment is approximately 46 inches. So that's about 9 inches of positive ease on me, so there's definitely lots of nice roominess on this. I absolutely love this finished object. I love wearing it, and my next step is now to actually get the pattern written up. I've done a ton of work on this pattern already. Like, I have all of my math done. I've started writing up the pattern, but as a mom to a toddler and a full-time employee as well, I just don't have like the large chunks of time to get into the deep work that you need to do to get patterns together. So things just kind of take a lot longer than they used to, and I'm definitely okay with that, but hoping to get a little bit more into a routine of, making the most of the limited time that I do have to put together new designs and get them out into the world. Here's a quick little try on of this sweater here, and it fits very nicely over this worsted weight pullover that I'm wearing. So there's definitely lots of nice room here. It has 4 buttons, and as I said, it has that really nice texture on it, and also a nice little miter of that stripe detail on the shoulder here as well. This one definitely does have a bit of a lower neckline. I am also planning to include a slightly shallower neckline that would kind of end more about here for the V. So that is Rockmill Cardigan. I will hopefully be getting the pattern out in the earlier portion of this year. My goal is to do it like before the end of April would be a nice target, so we'll hopefully get that going here soon. If you're interested in preview knitting this pattern, I'll have my preview knitting newsletter list link in the description below so that you'll get notified when I have the pattern actually ready for preview knitters in a few months here. Next up is Quotidian tee. This is a long sleeve version of one of my designs. I designed this pattern in 2022 and I knit a short sleeve version for the initial pattern release, but it has like a ton of options. There's short sleeve, there's long sleeve, there are a couple of different body fits, a couple of different sleeve fits. So there are a lot of possibilities that you can do with this pattern. And of course, you know, I can't knit all of them given that's so many different options, but I did want to knit a long sleeve version at some point, so I finally got around to doing that. I actually started this one in 2022, right before my daughter was born, or maybe right after my daughter was born. Anyway, I was looking for like an easy stockinette project to work on while I was, you know, getting used to being a mom and all of that. And then I kind of, you know, got through the winter, put it aside because this is worked in lace weight merino held with lace weight mohair. So it is definitely like a more, you know, fluffier piece that you're pretty much mostly going to be wearing in the winter time. So all of that to say, I started it, put it away, did the same thing the following year where I like worked on it during the winter time. And then I finally finished it in the winter of this past year. So I didn't have like a ton left to do this year. I think I had like a sleeve left to knit and some trims or something like that, maybe part of both sleeves, or maybe I had both sleeves left to knit. Anyway, you can go back to my prior podcast to see, you know, the exact timeline of how this project was tracking, but I finally finished it this year. I'm so excited that I did. I also ran into some issues with this one with gauge between working flat and in the round. I ended up needing to go down a needle size for the sleeve caps to make sure that, you know, there wasn't a ton of excess fabric at the cap. Going down a needle size fixed my gauge problem and made things look a lot cleaner. So I'm definitely really pleased with how this one turned out. So here is what this one looks like on. It is so luscious and cozy. I love the lace weight merino held with mohair. The mohair is Knit Picks Aloft in black, and the merino is something that I got in like 2011 when I was an intern in Boulder, Colorado at a yarn shop that is no longer in existence, so I cannot remember exactly what it was. It had been in my stash for an incredibly long time and I wanted to finally use it in a way that, you know, I was actually going to wear, because I really wasn't going to wear a light gray, slightly warm tone gray lace weight yarn. I was not going to make a sweater out of that, but I would wear something if I layered it with black and essentially made it a beautiful heathered dark charcoal gray sweater, which is what I have here. Absolutely love it. I haven't had a ton of chances to wear this. I wore it last winter, but it hasn't really, I haven't had enough like cold times to wear this yet. We definitely have started to get cold now, so you know, now being January and into February, that's really the prime season to wear this. I definitely find that the mohair kind of makes it, well, of course, just warmer than other fingering weight sweaters that I have, so it is truly a colder weather sweater. Here's a little peek standing up. It has a seamless set in sleeve. The sweater is worked from the bottom up. It is a little bit longer here, so just like a super cozy, basic, nice V-neck. I did an I-cord at the V neckline. The pattern has ribbing, but does provide suggestions for modifications like using I-cord. And then for the cuff, it is the twisted rib plus a little garter detail. So that's as per pattern for the cuff detail there. So that is the long sleeve version of Quotidian tee. Super happy to have this one done, especially since it was a work in progress for several years. I finally finished this one up in February of last year. This next one is Double VT, and it is another new design that I plan to publish this year at some point, hoping again for the first half of the year, but probably like later in the first half of the year. So this is a fingering weight t-shirt that has a V-neck at the front and at the back, thus the name Double V. The back one is a little bit higher up than the front, and it features lots of lateral braids. So you can see these lovely lateral braid details at the cuffs, at the shoulder and also at the hem. This one is worked with a pretty swingy body fit, so there are some increases worked through the body. The pattern is going to include options for long sleeves and a straight body as well, but this is, I feel like, a really nice summer silhouette. Having something that is very, you know, drapey and floaty is the perfect kind of knit to wear during the summer. This is fingering weight yarn. It's knitting for Olive Merino in the Dusty Artichoke color, so definitely a nice light yarn that works really well in the summer. And here is this one on. I really love the V-neck on this. It's like the exact right amount of like openness and depth and all of that that I really like for just like a casual V-neck t-shirt. Here's that shoulder detail and the lateral braid detailing at the sleeves. It also has I-cord edges to just finish off the edges, I-cord at the neckline, and also at the hem here. And as I said, this one is kind of like a swingy fit, so there's definitely a lot more ease at the hem here compared to the bust. It is super cute. I absolutely love it. I have not worn it a ton, but that's primarily because I haven't yet taken like official pattern photos for this one yet, because it is hard to find like good daylight hours. So, you know, morning time or around golden hour to be able to take pictures. Again, working around a full-time job, mothering a toddler, all of that, there just aren't necessarily that many times where I have that overlap of good lighting plus I'm actually available to take pictures. So that hasn't happened yet, so I haven't worn it a ton because I don't want to like mess up the sample before I get to take pictures. So hopefully here in the spring I'll be able to get some pictures finally so that I can actually start wearing this because I do absolutely love it. So again, this one is the double VT pattern, will be coming in 2026, hopefully before the midpoint of the year. Next is I think my favorite knit of the entire year. This is Oak Haven Tea and it is worked up in Pearl Soho Oleander in the bay leaf color. That is a fingering weight cotton and linen blend, so it's 50% cotton, 50% linen, so it's like the perfect summery fiber. And this is just like such a lovely finished object. The lace looks absolutely beautiful. There's also lace on the back here. It is a basic drop shoulder silhouette, and I did the long sleeve option in the pattern and also lengthen the body a bit. The pattern instructions are for a cropped body, but it's really easy to just add length before you start working the lace here. So that's what I did to make this a little bit longer as a nice top to wear with pants. So this is absolutely lovely. One of the best things about this is that you can put this in the washer and in the dryer, which is amazing. With something like this that's, you know, a closer fitting first layer item, it definitely needs to get washed more than a sweater that you're wearing over other things. So like my cardigans, I only wash a couple of times a year, and then like as needed as my, you know, toddler gets whatever on them. But for something again like a next to skin garment, does need to get washed a little bit more. So this goes in the washer, in the dryer. It definitely feels a little bit snug coming out of the dryer, but you just kind of like pull on it a little bit, and you know, after 30 minutes of wearing it, it is so comfy, it is so drapey. I absolutely love this, and I'll go ahead and try it on. All right, here is Oak Haven Tea on. As I said, this is probably my favorite finished object from this year. It feels just like so nice to wear. It looks beautiful. I love wearing this, you know, just as is, with like the nice open lace that like is a little saucy, but like not too saucy. Just like wearing it like this as a top. I also wear it over dresses. So I have a couple of like long floaty dresses that it just looks so nice over. It really creates an elevated look over those dresses. Or here it's a little bit more casual. Again, I'm like not wearing anything under it. I'm just wearing like some khaki drawstring pants, but it just looks so nice. I love the fit of this. It definitely does have a slim sleeve. I will say that my arms are like larger-ish in comparison to what my body quote-unquote should be for the size chart. I am a mother of a toddler who I am lifting a lot. I am also a weightlifter and former swimmer, so my, you know, arms and shoulders are just like definitely a bit broad. If I were to knit this again, I would maybe add in like 2 stitches of additional width to just have the tiniest amount of extra ease. I will say with this going into the dryer, you do notice it kind of like snugging up a little bit, so it shrinks down to a little bit below what the initial target measurement is in the pattern. That being said, it does then stretch out after you wear it to be in that more comfortable spot, but it would be nice to have just a tiny bit of extra for that initial put on to make it, you know, super comfortable, and then it would just be slightly less fitted than it is here. Like, this is definitely a very fitted sleeve here, but I like a fitted sleeve, especially for something that, again, I'm wearing as a first layer garment and want to wear cardigans over. I don't always want to have a lot of additional room in the sleeves if I'm going to be putting a cardigan over it, because then everything just starts to feel too bulky, it's too much. So slim sleeve is where it's at for me for something that I want to wear essentially as a top versus as a sweater over something else. Can't remember if I stood up at this point, but I'll go ahead and do that again. So here is that lace. It is just absolutely gorgeous. Then I'll turn around for the back lace too. It is a little bit cropped, so I'm wearing high-waisted pants here, and the top of the waistband is here. The bottom of this top is here, so I could theoretically, you know, like tuck it in if I wanted to. Generally don't. I generally leave it untucked, but for me, since I also wanted to like layer this over dresses, this is like the exact right balance between can absolutely wear it as a shirt over high-waisted pants, but still is a good length to wear over dresses and doesn't look awkward in length when layered over a dress. Next up is Purse Tank, and this is a sample of the only garment pattern that I released this year, though this is actually the fourth time that I have knit this pattern. So I knit several other versions in 2024 and then knit this last one in 2025. This one has the A-line body on it, and I primarily knit this one, I mean, I guess to demonstrate the A-line option in the pattern, but also because I just wanted to use these yarns. So there are two yarns here. Let me see if I can demonstrate a little bit better. So you can see that there are two different yarns between the front and the back. The front is kind of like this chartreuse color, the back is gold, and I had just had these yarns sitting in my stash for a decade, more than a decade, like 2013, 2014-ish for both of these. And it was time to use them. And I knew that I wasn't going to like knit a one skein shawl or other one skein project out of these yarns. So I'm like, okay, what can I do to make a garment that I will love to wear? And the key here is I didn't have enough for an entire garment with either of them. So I just knit the front out of one and the back out of the other. And now I have like two tank tops in one, which is absolutely great. So I can wear either one, and even from the side, it like still looks cohesive. It doesn't look necessarily out of place from a color palette perspective, but you know, if I'm wearing cardigan over this, you're only going to be able to see one of them at a time. So I absolutely love how this turned out as well. I wore it a lot during the summer when, you know, it's weather appropriate to wear, and of course have not really been wearing it since it got cold. But I'm excited to wear it again this next summer. All right, here is this one on, and as I said, this has a bit of an A-line fit, so it's fitted at the top. It has negative ease at the bust to make sure that it's not like gapping away too much at the underarm, because it needs to be close fitting as a tank top, but there is plenty of floaty ease at the bottom to make sure that is comfortable to wear during the summer months. And then here's that side view with the different colors. And then I will also flip it around so you can see the other color in front. All right, and here it is with the gold in front, which I love just as much as the chartreuse. And again, it looks absolutely lovely. I can't be more pleased with how this turned out. I did a split hem at the side, and even though this is like two different colors front and back, it's not actually traditionally seamed. This top is actually knit in 4 panels, worked from the top down, and you have like slip stitches along the edges of the panel and then just join things together with a 3-needle bind off. So because it's like that slip stitch edge, it's like picking up stitches along the edge of a sock heel, which makes it super easy. It's like kind of hard to mess up the pickup because you're going to be counting the slip stitches to make sure each side aligns with the other side that you're going to be joining it to. And yeah, it's just like 1 stitch per slip stitch, 3-needle bind off, and you have beautiful joined panels. So it makes it really fun to be able to color block in different ways. So front to back, you could even do like quadrants or like one panel as a pop. It makes it a great way to play with leftover yarns. That's actually like the entire idea behind this project. So I started designing this at the start of 2024 and finally got the pattern out like summer, late summer 2025. And yes, I'll be sure to pop in a photo of my leftover version because I absolutely love that one. I just kind of did gradients of different leftovers and different color themes in that one. And yeah, this is a different way of using not leftover yarn, but just yarn that I have in my stash that I'm not really going to be able to use otherwise in a garment form. So again, this one is Purse Tank. I had a great time knitting it and I'm so glad to have this one in my wardrobe now. Next up is another version of the double V tee. This is a long sleeve option with a straight body and split hem. Again, it has like the shorter V in the back and the deeper V in the front. I feel like this one languished for a really long time. I cast it on in like July and didn't finish it up until near the end of December. So that was way too many months, way many more months than it actually needed to be on the needles. Things happen. It's also fingering weight. So fingering weight long sleeve sweaters definitely take a little bit of time to execute. That being said, I am very pleased with how this turned out. This is worked up in Leading Men Fiber Arts Showstopper Sock. I had purchased this yarn a number of years ago, maybe like 2021 or something, and finally got around to knitting it up into this sweater. I actually still have a skein and maybe like skein and a half left, so I can definitely like knit up a pair of socks, or maybe I could knit up like a toddler sweater with my leftovers, so I have a little bit more that I can use in the future. And here is this one on. Again, I love the depth and openness of this V. I think it's absolutely perfect, and it has a split hem, straight body, so it's just a bit of a different silhouette compared to the t-shirt, but both options are included in the pattern. And of course, this one has long sleeves, so there's the short and long sleeves included in the pattern. So it's definitely one that you can make your own. You'll be able to choose either body fit regardless of whether you're doing the short sleeve or the long sleeve. So it's really just about your personal preference and what you're going for. And this one again has that kind of extended drop shoulders, so it goes wider over onto the shoulder and then comes in a little bit closer on the body here. I think this adjustment is especially useful for something like this, a first layer top, but absolutely love it. Again, it has the slim drop shoulder sleeve and it has the lateral braid detail with just one lateral braid and an I-cord here at the cuff. And on those lateral braids, because lateral braids do take some time, but they are really fun and satisfying to work. If you want to, you'll be able to work just this like simple sleeve lateral braid trim at the hem too. So if you don't want to work like that taller lateral braid detail at the hem, again, it's kind of a lot of lateral braiding. So if you don't want to work that many lateral braids, you can just work this clean and simple finish like I have here at the sleeve. I'm probably gonna knit another one of these in black yarn with the simple trim here at both the sleeve and the bottom hem as like a super simple version of this with a little bit less lateral braiding, but I think it'll still look really cool. So excited to knit that sometime this year, maybe. Hopefully I'll get to it this year. But again, the pattern I want to have out by like maybe the end of June. So Q2 goal, I guess, for me to be able to get this pattern out. But now that this is finished, I just finished it up like, I forget exactly when in December, but towards the end of December. I am so excited to get photos of this at some point because again, I don't want to ruin the sample, but this is the exact kind of sweater that I want to live in during the winter time. Yes, I do love a chunkier sweater, but this is like so practical to deal with like temperature fluctuations and stuff. If I get too cold, I throw on a nice thick cardigan over it, but this is just a nice stay cozy but don't overheat kind of thickness. So just a nice fingering weight sock yarn. Love this kind of sweater. Definitely takes some more time than a worsted weight sweater, for example, but I feel like the results are so worthwhile. Now on to my last sweater of the year, and this was finished with like 30 minutes to spare to midnight on the 31st. So definitely pushing it for this last project of the year, but this is the Harlow sweater by Kerri, and I absolutely love how this turned out, though I have not blocked it yet, but I'm sure it's also going to be absolutely lovely. I'm probably going to love it even more once it's been blocked, because then the ribbing will relax around the bottom and stuff, so that'll be excellent. I did make a couple of modifications to this. So the first is very noticeable here. I knit like a more of a crew neck collar, and then I also did a split hem at the side. And also to note, I knit in the size down from what is technically recommended for my bust circumference, just because I typically don't like super oversized things, and I felt my quote-unquote recommended size would just have way too much ease compared to what I personally like to wear. So this is technically a size down, but it feels perfect for what I personally like. And for context, I'm a 37 to 38 full bust circumference, and this is the size small versus medium would have been recommended for my size. Here is the Harlow sweater on. It just feels like a hand knit sweatshirt, which is exactly my goal when I first cast this on. I love it, and as I said, I did adjust the collar to just be more like a crew neck collar, and I found that with the total stitch count around the collar, I ended up doing a bunch of decreases right before doing an Italian bind off to get a more fitted look, because it was just looking too like, it was just kind of popping open with the stitch count for the funnel neck, which like makes sense. It's a funnel neck. It has a different aesthetic than a crew neck. So I decreased one stitch for every 4 stitches around the neckline and kind of rearranged things so it was still in a 1x1 pattern to do a tubular bind off at the neckline bind off. So that's what I did there to make sure it felt like a crew neck, but also wasn't too tight. I actually had to redo it because I did it too tight to start with. I reduced half of the stitches, which was far, far too many. I knew that it was going to be like overkill, but I was like, oh, I can just bind off loosely and it'll be fine. It was not fine. I could get it over my head, but like you could kind of feel the tension as you were wearing it, just like on your neck. And it felt like, you know, too much tension around the neck. So I just like couldn't handle it. So I ripped it out and redid the bind off. I just kind of like cut the top off and then put the stitches back on the needles, redid my decreases, and redid my bind off. Took some time to do, but like I didn't have to like reknit the whole collar or anything. But here it is standing up, and this will definitely relax once I wash and block it. It is fresh off the needles. I haven't woven in the ends. As I said, I finished this up 30 minutes to midnight on New Year's Eve. The sleeve is just the right length here. I expect it to grow a little bit, but not a ton. And I did a split hem. It's an even split, so the back is not longer than the front. They're both the same length. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the yarn on this one. So this was another kind of like yarn problem solving thing that I did. This is actually 3 yarns that I'm using here. It is 2 strands of Knit Pick Stroll. One is highly variegated that I got a decade plus ago, and one is a dark solid color and then a black mohair held along with, and those things blended together create this beautiful deep marl that's absolutely stunning, wearable, all of the things, and all of the things that it was not when it was just the variegated yarn on its own. So if you have yarns in your stash, especially a sweater quantity in your stash that you're like not happy with how it's looking knitted up, try holding it together with other yarns to turn it into a marl, to tone it down with mohair, and that can completely transform the look of the yarn from something that you're not happy with into something that's going to be like a true everyday staple for you. All right, that is all of my sweaters. So I'm going to go ahead and put my original sweater back on, start talking about my kiddo sweaters, and then on to accessories. So I knit 4 sweaters for my daughter this year, 1 cardigan, 2 pullovers, and a t-shirt. So I will go ahead and show you these. So the first cardigan is this really cute cabled number here. This is my Little Bryce cardigan pattern. It's the kids version of my Bryce Pillar cardigan pattern. I designed this when I was pregnant with my daughter back in 2022, released the pattern in 2023, and of course my daughter grew out of the one that I had initially knit for her, so I knit her another one. This is the 4-year size, so I expect her to be able to wear this through the end of this year since she just turned 3. It fits her really well right now. There's definitely still some room to grow in the sleeves. The body is a little bit shorter at this point because my daughter is tall, but in terms of comparison to the adult one, it does look pretty similar. It is more of a cropped, it's not a cropped cardigan, it's just like, it's not a long cardigan, it's like hip length. So kind of same story for my kids version here. This one is worked up in Knit Picks High Desert Sport. It is a really smooth yarn. It has great cable stitch definition, as you can see. I am definitely starting to see some pilling. You can see that pilling that's happening here, but like, I mean, my daughter's a toddler. She's like getting up to all sorts of stuff. So it's not unexpected that especially the cuff area is getting a little bit pilled on this yarn. The body is definitely holding up pretty well, so it's really just more, you know, getting messy on the sleeves and then needing to wash the sleeves and all of that sort of jazz. Then I knit up this little plinth tee for my daughter. This is knit up in Pearl Soho Santolina in this really pretty pink color. And I did a modification to add a little bit more twirl at the hem here. Knit the short sleeve version. This is a pattern that I released in 2024, and there's a matching adult pattern as well. So this is just another version for her as she grows, since, you know, the ones that I knit for her the prior year no longer fit because she's gotten bigger, because that's what kids do and all of that jazz. But I really love how this one turned out. She got a lot of wear out of it during the warmer months. And shout out about Pearl Soho Santolina is that, again, it's a machine washable and machine dryable yarn. So being a toddler where she's getting paint on things, she's getting sticky on things, like things are getting washed a lot, this is holding up incredibly well. I would absolutely recommend this yarn to any parent of toddlers or anyone who just wants an easy care yarn. So it is a cotton, hemp, and tencel blend or something like that. It's a cellulose fiber blend, and it's actually very comfortable to work with in comparison to some other ones. There's definitely more give in comparison to the Pearl Soho Oleander that is 50% cotton, 50% linen. This is so much nicer to work with on your hands compared to that one. That one's not like bad to work with, it's just like it's an elastic, where this one has a lot more elasticity, which makes a huge difference in the knitting experience. It also washes really well. You do see some pilling and stuff. You can kind of see that pilling happening, but I feel like what it does is just like, it just makes it feel a little bit sweatshirty. So I am not necessarily mad about that. It just kind of has like a worn in softness that the pilling is creating rather than being, you know, super fluffy, annoying balls. So I'm really happy with how this one turned out. I also knit the size 4 years in this one, so we should be able to wear it, you know, this summer time as well before needing to knit a new one for her for the following year when she would be too big for this one. So when I bought the yarn for that tee, I also bought additional yarn to make this top here. So this is also worked up in Pearl Soho Santolina. So I bought 2 skeins of the darker pink and 1 skein of this lighter peachy pink here, essentially with a goal of knitting that top for her, plus this one where I could use the leftovers from that project plus the additional skein that I got and work up a long sleeve stripy tee. So this does not have a pattern, but it is essentially based on the same number structure as the little plinth tee pattern. So I just kind of took my overall pattern framework that I had from that design and just turned it into a really easy top-down drop shoulder pattern. That design is bottom up, the little plinth tee is bottom up, but like the number structure is all the same. So I used it just to make myself a fun little easy knit for my daughter without needing to like go buy a pattern or like truly recreate something new and swatch and do all of the things. I was like, I know that I can get gauged because I just got gauged with this yarn with that design, so I can just do this, like use the same structure to get something that looks completely different, but has the same numbers. So I did tweak the sleeves a little bit so the sleeves are more relaxed because again, this is just kind of like an oversized sweater situation. So I wanted the sleeves to be a little bit more relaxed to go with the vibe of that. Also knit this up basing my numbers off of the 4-year size. So pleased with how it turned out. Again, this has been going into the washer and dryer. This one has now been getting a lot of wear because it's, you know, cold outside and all of that. And I absolutely love on this one the contrasting stripes going from the light color on the body to the dark color as the background on the sleeve. I think it's really fun. I may end up turning this into a true pattern at some point, but I don't have any kind of specific plans. But if you would like to see this turned into a pattern, do let me know in the comments. I, again, have limited time to bring designs from ideas into like a real life pattern that you can buy. But if there is a ton of interest, I would absolutely be willing to work on this a little bit sooner than I might otherwise. The last sweater that I knit for my daughter is a repeat of the prior one. I just did the same thing but in blue. As soon as my daughter saw me knitting the pink sweater, first she asked, "Is that for me, mommy?" And then second she asked, "Can I have one in blue?" So I'm not going to say no to my daughter for, you know, knitting her something that she wants to wear. So we ended up finding a yarn store when we were on vacation in Michigan this fall, and she picked out the yarn colors here, and I knit her a blue sweater that is, again, the same kind of structure overall as the pink one, just worked up in blue. One note on this one, this is technically a sport weight yarn. So this is Kelborn Woolen Skipper in a, I think it's sailor blue and powder blue color. So the sailor blue is the dark blue and then the powder blue is this light color here. Again, I love the light body with dark sleeves and the stripe swapping and all of that. I think it's so cute. My daughter wears a lot. This one is a 100% cotton yarn, so it definitely was a little bit more of like a traditional cotton knitting experience compared to the Pearl Soho Santalina, which feels slightly closer to a traditional wool knitting experience, you know, with the elasticity and all of that. That being said, it was still a positive knitting experience. I didn't find it too straining or anything to work on, and the finished yarn is holding together nicely. It is also experiencing some pilling similar to the other one, but again, it just kind of gives it a lived-in kind of sweatshirt feel, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. This is also knit up in a size 4 years, or based on the size 4 years from my little plinth tee pattern. And one adjustment that I did make between the two is I knit the collar a little bit taller on this one. The primary reason why the collar is the height that it is on the pink one is simply because I was about to run out of yarn for that light peach color. So I basically knit enough collar that I was like, I am definitely not going to run out of yarn if I bind off now. And this one I knit it to the height that I actually wanted to knit it to, and it definitely fits a lot nicer with that, you know, it just has like a more nice crew neck aesthetic on this blue sample compared to the pink one. My daughter loves both of them, wears both of them. We're probably wearing, you know, each one approximately once a week, and they go in the washer and dryer. They come out looking, you know, basically new, which is great. This one might have, yeah, you can kind of see that there's like a tiny little bit of staining on it, but the point of hand knits for loved ones is that they're going to get worn. So for a toddler, they're going to get messy, they're probably going to get stained, and that is okay. So it is just really fun seeing my daughter wear things and specifically like pick them out from her drawer, the things that I've made for her. That is all of my sweater projects. I feel like I've already been talking for quite a long time, but we're technically only halfway through. So I had 11 sweater projects between the things I knit for myself and the things that I knit for my daughter. And I also had 11 accessories projects. I do feel like these are going to go a little bit faster just because I knit more of like duplicate projects. So like two of the same thing, so it'll go a little bit faster for the rest of the video. And there are a couple of things that I don't have on hand because they're like with my daughter for daycare or with my husband since I knit a hat for him. So I'm gonna go through accessories by category, starting with hats. So at the start of the year, I knit up 2 design samples of my Rockmill hat pattern. I knit a worsted weight version here and also a fingering weight version. And I'll come up a little closer so you can see. So this uses the same stitch pattern that my Rockmill cardigan does. And this one has one variation of the pattern. This is a different variation. You can see there are only like 2 of the garter bumps here and then the one. This one has 3 and then 1, and there are a couple of other options also included in the pattern. So these are just lovely hats that I knit up at the start of the year for a new design. This one is knit in Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino, and this is worked in Knitting for Olive Merino held with Untold Mohair. And I didn't use the Knitting for Olive Mohair just because it wasn't in stock at the place that I was buying from in the like matching color. So I just found a matching color of a different kind of mohair that was in stock. It still looks really lovely. So pleased with how this turned out. I will say that the fingering weight version is like more of like a heavy fingering to sport weight. So if you're using like a true fingering or like a lighter fingering, you probably would have some issues achieving gauge in this one. You know, if you're holding fingering with mohair, or I guess light fingering with mohair, that definitely helps to fill things in and get the desired result. So I knit the fingering weight one with a folded brim here, and the worsted weight is just regular. I'll be sure to insert some footage of me trying on these hats. Very pleased with these. I've been wearing these a lot now that it is wintertime again. I know I also wore them a lot last winter, but these are kind of like my 2 go-to hats, and it's really just like, which one am I grabbing from the little basket that I have near the front door with hand knits in it. So often am grabbing either one of these. I do try to rotate out the knits that I have in that basket just so I can like wear the different hand knit accessories that I've made over the years, since as someone who's been knitting for 17 plus years at this point, I have knit a lot of accessories over the years, but I also like knitting accessories, so I keep knitting more accessories even though I don't technically like need them. They're still really fun to knit and I like doing it, and it is always fun, you know, trying out something new. So I just kind of like rotate through the things that I have. The other 2 hats that I knit this year I do not have here to show you, but I will be sure to insert photos and video of these hats. So the first hat I knit for my husband, and it's just kind of an improvised hat with 1x1 rib and some nice, you know, quadrant decreases at the crown. I knit it up in UU Yarns Yuso Sporty, and I think the charcoal color. One of my local yarn stores has a really great selection of UU yarns, and it's just really nice, like solid and heathered colors of a, you know, more affordable wool options. This yarn was really nice to work with, has good stitch definition. I actually had knit my husband a hat out of the same yarn but the worsted weight version a couple of years ago, and that one got a hole in it. So that's, you know, why I knit this new hat, because I'm like, I can't let my husband be wearing a hat with a hole in it. And I mean, I could have mended that hat, but also he expressed interest in something that he could like fold up at the brim. The other one was just like, you know, a single layer beanie. So this one has enough length that you can fold it up for a nice folded brim style. So he really, really likes it. I knit it in 2 days right before Christmas, so he was able to open it on Christmas morning. That was really fun. It has definitely been a hit. He's been wearing it a lot, which is definitely the goal there. And it is just a really, really nice basic hat. The next hat that I knit is for my daughter, and she had started to outgrow the last hat that I knit her at the end of last year, so I needed to knit her a new hat. This time I knit up the Sledding and Snowballs hat by Lena Matheson. I had purchased this pattern during the Indie Design Gift Along, and I had seen a couple of months ago a hat at a store that had like colored stripes stripes at the ribbed brim and then a cable hat above it. So I just kind of took this pattern and took that idea of using stripes at the brim. I just pulled together a whole bunch of sock leftovers that I had in my stash. So this is entirely made out of leftover yarn. The brim is a bunch of different colors of, I think, mostly Knotty Pine Fiber Company from the Advent that I had purchased in 2022, and just like little bits that I had left from those. And then the main color is from a pair of socks that I had started in 2011 or 12 when I was in college. I knit one sock and then I decided that I did not want to knit the second sock, so I just had this leftover yarn. So it just became the top of the hat, the main yarn for the hat, in a lovely purple color. So that was a fun way to like use up some older stash yarns, well, both older stash yarns and then just like tiny leftover bits that I really wouldn't be able to use for any kind of large scale project. A few stripes at the cuff of a hat is the perfect way to use up those tiny bits of leftovers and adds a really fun pop to an otherwise very simple hat. Next up are mitts and mittens. I knit a couple of pairs this year. I started off the year with a pair of toddler mittens that I modified based on my Quotidian mitts pattern. So that's a fingerless mitt in fingering, sport, worsted, and DK. I guess switch the DK and worsted there to go in order of the yarn weights. And there are options also to do a full mitten top. So what I did to get the toddler size that I did is I used fingering weight yarn, but the worsted weight instructions to result in a toddler sized mitt. And then I did the full mitten top versus a fingerless mitt, since when my kiddo is playing outside at daycare, she needs something warm for her hands, and I just used leftover sock yarn held with leftover mohair to knit these up. They went super fast, and I am of course going to need to knit up another pair very soon because her hands have definitely grown enough where she's starting to outgrow the mittens. Yes, a new pair will definitely be in order very soon. Then all the way towards the end of the year, I knit 2 more pairs of mittens, and these are both design samples. So I knit a new design called Sidewise Mitts, and I have a fingering weight version and a worsted weight version. And as I said, these are samples for a new design that I released at the end of last year, kind of as a little last minute gift knit. I've been releasing a giftable accessory pattern every year since I started designing in 2013. So I have quite a few little giftable accessories that I've released around this time of year at this point, and this was this year's version. Just really simple fingerless mitts with the lateral braid detailing around the cuff. So here's the worsted weight one. This one is knit in Universal Yarns Deluxe Worsted, and I think it's like apple or something like that is the color. I had gotten this, I can't even remember, but a very long time ago on vacation, and finally got around to using the skein of yarn. I just love the dimension that the lateral braids add. And what's really nice about the pattern is that it has you resolve the elongated stitches that typically happen after a lateral braid. So it just looks like clean stockinette in between those lateral braid details. So this is the worsted weight version. So here is the fingering weight version. Again, you have the lateral braid details, and it's an I-cord at the very top edge and a ribbing at the cuff here. For this one, I did contrast colors for the lateral braid. So you work the row below the braid and the braid row itself in a contrast color, and it creates just a really, really nice pop. It's a fun way to use a tiny bit of leftovers again. So the entirety of the mitts use less than 50 grams of yarn. So if you just have like a 50 gram skein of fingering weight yarn, and then you just have like leftover whatever, just a little scraps that you can pair along with, that's a really fun way to use them up. And I also feel like it has a little bit of a fun vintage aesthetic with this contrast color. I feel like it might just be the colorway here that's kind of giving it a vintage vibe with the, kind of classic red and gray. Also, these are like Ohio State colors, so it kind of feels a little collegiate. You could work it up in team colors, so you could display a little bit of, you know, team spirit or whatever in your color choices if you wanted to go that route. So definitely a fun little project. I loved working these up. Super simple and a fun way to work those lateral braids. I have worked quite a few projects this year with those lateral braids. The double V, T, both the short sleeve and long sleeve have lateral braids. These have lateral braids. I'll be showing some socks that have lateral braids. So kind of a theme of this year, working lateral braids, but I don't know, I kind of have fun working similar techniques again in like different project iterations. All right, on to the last category, and that is socks and slippers. So I knit 3 pairs of socks and 1 pair of slippers this year, and I will start off with the slippers. So these are a pair of wisp slippers, and it's a little hard to see in the light here, but they are just a slipper that has a, not really cabled, but it has like a wavy twisted stitch design. So these are a really fun one-piece construction. And I just had this single skein of bulky weight in my stash for a number of years, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead, turn them into slippers, because I know I like wearing slippers inside. When I'm working from home, especially during the winter time, I'll like wear hand knit socks and then put hand knit slippers on top of that as a nice little cozy extra. So now I have a new pair of slippers that I can wear. They definitely are showing signs of wear because, you know, I've been just walking around in these slippers. It is also like a superwash yarn and has a tendency to pill. So this is knit out of Knit Picks Swish Bulky, and it is like really soft and lovely yarn, but often really soft and lovely yarns, especially like 100% merino, do have a tendency to pill, but they're still very cozy, very soft. I love to wear them, and I'm gonna get, you know, a good solid few years of wear out of these. And whenever I end up running through them, I can always just knit up another pair. They're like a nice weekend project. This was one of my holiday accessory pattern releases a few years back, and so I just knit up another one, and yeah, have definitely been enjoying wearing them. I'm starting to enjoy wearing them again, and now that it is starting to be cold again outside. The next thing I knit was a pair of socks by Summer Lee. These are the Cider House socks, and I really love how these turned out. I think that they look really pretty. I used leftover yarns from a variety of projects. So I had knit a pair of fingerless mitts out of the main color of this yarn, and I was like, I probably have enough to use as a main color for socks if I'm like using other colors for other parts of the sock. So even though I didn't do a different color for the heel, it's the same color. I used different colors for the toe and for like a good chunk of the cuff. So, you know, kind of reduces down the total amount of yarn needed. I will say that you can definitely see some wear on these socks starting to happen. So over on this side, you can see there's like this kind of pilling, felting happening here, and it's like pretty especially prevalent on the heel. I will say that I am not super nice to my socks when it comes to laundering them. They just go in the washer and the dryer. I always use super wash yarn, and my preferred sock yarn is a merino and nylon blend to help increase the longevity of a sock that is, again, not treated super well going through the dryer and all of that. These are 100% wool. These are all leftovers from the same yarn dyer. It's all Knotty Pine Fiber Company, and it just, you know, leftover from, I think, again, these are Advent leftovers from the 2022 Advent. These are leftovers from a pair of fingerless mitts that I knit a number of years ago. So it's all the same yarn base, and it's super nice to knit with. It's super nice to wear, but I do expect these to kind of go through their useful life a little sooner than some of those merino nylon blends that are like the 3-4 ply, have a tighter spin, all of that sort of thing, because those yarns definitely do hold up quite a long time. I have some socks that I've had for, you know, 10-ish years now that are still holding up pretty well, and these will definitely not last 10 years, but that's okay. I can always knit more socks. Part of the joy of hand knit socks is wearing them, and sometimes wearing things means you will eventually wear through them, and that is okay. I'm okay with that. Two last projects to talk about. These are both the same pattern, sidewise socks. These again were a new pattern that I released in the fall, and they have that lateral braid detail. These ones have the contrast colors, and the contrast for both of these contrast colors, the darker green and the lighter green, were just like leftovers from other projects throughout the years. The main color is Coop Knits Socks Yeah, and I think the color is called Beryl. It's kind of mostly blue, but has some like purpley heathering in it. So definitely a nice yarn to work with. This blend is kind of like that, you know, really true sock blend that I like. So that, you know, multiply, tighter twist, has nylon in it. So even though there definitely is still some like pilling and all of that, which like it's a sock, it goes in shoes, especially boots, you're gonna get some pilling because there's friction between your shoe and the sock. So I am truly putting them to the test in terms of, you know, the fiber durability and all of that. These are not socks that are going to stay super aesthetic for a super long period of time because I'm wearing them. But I had a really nice time knitting these. The lateral braid cuff provides a nice little bit of interest, and then it's basically stockinette city throughout the rest of it, so you can just fly through the stockinette, and that's really fun. And yeah, just have a cute little pair of socks at the end of it with kind of like vintagey vibe cuff if you're doing the contrast color, or, you know, a more subtle aesthetic if you're knitting the solid. I will throw that on my little sock blocker next. So here is the solid version that I knit up. I knit these up in Knit Pick Stroll in Dove Heather just to showcase a solid version of the sock as well. Again, I really love how dimensional the lateral braids look, but it's otherwise basically just this stockinette sock, and like, who doesn't need more stockinette socks in their life? I will say, I don't know if I will use Stroll again for socks, and I know that like that's the purpose of Stroll, but let me show you something here. So these fingerless mitts were also knit in Knit Pick Stroll, and I have not put these through the machine wash and dry because they're just mitts. They've just gone through, you know, a nice hand wash block situation. So the fabric is lovely and smooth, and then on the sock, you can already see like how much pilling there is on the sock in comparison to the beautiful clean surface of these fingerless mitts here. So again, I know that something that's like a sock is going to have a lot more wear on it simply because of the placement. It's on your foot, it's going in shoes, all of that jazz. But I do feel like it has more pilling than I would like to see in a sock, and I feel like it's going to wear down faster. That being said, the yarn is so soft. Like, that is the thing about Knit Pick Stroll. It's affordable, it's really soft. So I think this would be a good thing to try out for a fingering weight sweater. I do have a couple of sweater quantities in Stroll that I do want to try out at some point, so I'll be able to test out that theory to see if I like Stroll better in a sweater format that I am hand washing and laying flat to dry. I mean, technically I could just hand wash and lay flat to dry my socks, but that is just like not my vibe. That is not what my lifestyle is like right now. So I will just kind of stick to those yarn blends that I know are gonna hold up well over time. So that is everything that I knit this past year in 2025. I'm really proud of all of my knits, and I feel like most of them were wins this year, which I feel like doesn't always happen. I feel like I did have a bit of a loss on that sock. That's the second pair of socks that I've knit in Stroll, and I think I've just decided that, again, maybe not the sock yarn for me, but I love all of my sweaters. I'm really looking forward to wearing them even more this year, especially since some of them were finished towards the end of the year and didn't really get a chance to wear them last year. And I'm also looking forward to continue knitting more sweaters this year. So I thought it would be fun to go through some of my overall project stats for the year. So as I said at the start of the video, I knit 7 adult sweaters, 4 kid sweaters, 9 adult accessories, and 2 kid accessories. So if you break it down between like sweater and accessory, it's like half sweaters, half accessories. I feel like for next year, I would maybe like to move things a little bit more in the sweater direction. So maybe like 60% sweaters to 40% accessories, or like maybe 2/3, 1/3. So focus a little bit more on sweaters, though I do still have some accessories that I need to knit, like, you know, toddler keeps growing and keeps growing out of things. My mom requested a hat. I want to knit another pair of fingerless mitts for my husband to go with his new hat. So there are definitely going to be some accessory projects, but I do definitely want to focus on sweaters. I had a range of yarn weights from fingering weight up to bulky, though more than half of my projects were in fingering weight yarn. It's a little less fingering weight heavy than I was last year, but still 60%, a majority, were in fingering weight yarn. So I'm still knitting things that are a finer gauge and do take more time. I don't necessarily see that changing too much because I really like wearing fingering weight sweaters. It's just kind of a fact of life, and they do take a little bit more time, but maybe mixing a few more heavier weight sweaters into the mix too this year as well. Just over half of my projects this year were from stash yarn, and I define stash yarn as yarn that I purchased more than 1 year before I cast it on. Always glad to be using up some of my stash yarn. The average age of yarn that I used for projects this year was about 4 years old, so average age of 2021 purchase dates, though the median was 2024. So I definitely had some projects there that were skewing the average age a little bit older. So, you know, things that I've had since like 2011, 2012, 2013, those were driving the average age a little bit down. But it definitely is good to use up those older yarns. I definitely have a goal for this year to continue using some of those older yarns that I have in my stash because I have them. I've had them for so long. A lot of them are really beautiful and I want to go ahead and use them. 6 of my projects also included leftover yarn, so that's about a quarter of my projects had leftover yarn incorporated into them. I also think that's really fun to, again, like use up things that you already have. In this case, you know, leftovers from other projects. Sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to get those used up, but I've been thinking of ways that I can incorporate those leftovers into my projects. Those contrast details for like the lateral braids or adding in stripes, that sort of thing, can be a really great way to incorporate some of those leftovers that you really can't do a whole project out of, but you can absolutely work them in and get through some more of that yarn that you already have without needing to buy something new. So compared to last year, I knit the exact same number of projects, which I thought was kind of interesting that my knitting quantity is so consistent year over year. I did have a difference of like my project breakdown. So last year I had 2 more sweaters than I had this year, and this year I had 2 more accessories than I had last year. So it just kind of flip-flopped on my sweater versus accessory breakdown a little bit. But my sweaters this year had a lot more sleeves. Last year I knit a ton of like tank tops and t-shirts, so I wouldn't be surprised if the amount of like knitting that I did for the sweaters was relatively similar, just because I was knitting, you know, sleeved sweaters or more sleeved sweaters this year compared to what I did last year. That is something that I do want to track for next year, is like how much yarn did I use up. And that'll definitely be a lot easier to do now because this past fall I got all of my yarn stash into Ravelry. Despite being on Ravelry since like, I don't know, 2009, 10, something like that, like a very long time ago, I had never used the stash feature to speak of, but now my entire yarn stash is in Ravelry. So it's going to be a lot easier for me to just like enter in my project, how many grams it used, and have Ravelry calculate out like how many yards did I do for a project and that sort of thing. So I definitely think that I'm going to try to do that for next year, just out of curiosity to see like how many yards have I knit in a year and all of that. Part of me did think that I was going to knit more this year than I did, just as my toddler is getting a little bit older and more independent. I definitely do have a little bit more time on my hands compared to when she was younger. That being said, like, do still have a full-time job, and also my designing on the side, like the computer portion of the design work. All of these things do take time, and then also I spent a ton of time in my garden this year, so I ended up having an unexpected week of work off in the spring of last year, and I like installed a whole new garden in my front yard, and I also have just been doing a lot more gardening. So I planted like 35 shrubs and trees over the course of 2025. And I have a lot of garden projects like that I'm excited about and are on the horizon for this next year. So I would probably expect my knitting to be approximately the same next year as it was this year, just because like, yes, maybe I have a little bit more time, but also like I have a lot of gardening that I want to do as well. And I still have my job, I still have designing, I still have being a mom and all of that. So it is always a challenge, you know, balancing all of the things that you want to balance. I feel like there's never enough time to do all of the things that we want to do, at least within the time that would be like ideal to get the things done in. But the thing is, I still have time. I still have hopefully many, many years ahead to continue knitting, to continue designing, to continue my garden. So I have all of these years ahead of me that I can continue to work on projects that I am excited about. And yes, I am very excited about knitting in 2026, gardening in 2026, watching my child grow in 2026. All of these things I am so excited about and can't wait for this upcoming year. Thank you so much for sticking around if you've made it this far. I greatly appreciate you spending the time with me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my future videos. I have a very chock full podcast that I need to record soon because I did a ton of knitting at the end of the year and have also cast on some new things at the start of this year, so I have lots to share, and I will see you next time.